today?
Hey, first topic, Airbnb just filed to go public.
Hell yeah. Shocker to me.
Why?
Uh, well, you think they would be tanking in a pandemic?
You'd
Why
think
don't you tell
that,
us a
but
little?
they just made a profit this past quarter. They have fully completed the pandemic bounce back.
That's crazy because I heard that they were down like 700 million in the first like what 9 months of the year, and then somehow managed to make a profit. Like
Yeah,
how are they doing this?
well, because think of how many people took trips throughout the summer, like socially distanced or driving trips or things like that nature, and people don't want to be in hotels right now. So
Yeah.
they saw a lot of they are not 2019 levels, obviously, but they saw a lot of their demand come back, and I'll be curious to see what that looks like. I would imagine it's not super. I don't know how Airbnb's demand is during the holidays, but I think it was just a Airbnb went from kind of a Left for Dead potential casualty of the pandemic to, oh, hey, now they're back and stronger than all the massive hotel brands that have a ton of debt on their balance sheets that they have to deal with. Whereas Airbnb doesn't have to deal with that because none of the houses they actually own or places, you know.
Yeah, no, they definitely like pivoted in the right way and beat their beat the hell out of their competition. Hotels, the whole hotel industry. I know they've been trying to go public for a while, right? Like, or there's been talks and rumors, murmurs, whatever you want to call it, for the last what 2 or 3 years or since their inception, really. What do you think like kicked this thing off? Like, why are they trying to go public now of all times?
I think they're trying to. I think they're trying to gain more and more market share while their competitors are weaker. This is the weakest you're going to get a Marriott, a Hilton, a Hyatt. Um, they have other competitors too that they list, but that's in terms of like their experiences business. I'm talking about just their core rental business. Um, they know that they've got the brand, they've got the demand for them to go public, and that they have the footing back under them, after the first two quarters of this year were so bad, that they can finally make the move and go public like they wanted to do last year, but they just weren't able to do. And it kept getting delayed because of COVID. Yeah, I just think it's an interesting company just in general. It's going to be one of, if not the biggest IPO this year in the U.S. Obviously, the failed Ant IPO was going to be the biggest in the world ever, but that didn't go through, as we've talked about. And then I'll be curious to see if it's bigger than the Snowflake IPO. I just think it's interesting though that they like it's a it's a company that's a platform, but it's not acting like an Uber in terms of where they're not responsible for anything. They made safety commitments after following some shootings at some house parties that are taking place at Airbnbs. They've also cracked down on some other things. They did have a layoff though earlier in the pandemic. I don't think that was necessarily we're strapped for cash and we're trying to get through. I think a lot of it was strategic of what they were trying to do. So I don't know much about the actual layoff itself. Um, but I did like how they did establish a COVID relief fund of $250 million, although there were some issues getting that out to hosts.
Of course.
But they also do promote stakeholder capitalism, and that they're going to have some stakeholders on a committee of stakeholders on their board of directors after they go public. So you don't see that a lot from especially newer companies or tech companies that try to claim that they're saving the world and solving every problem on the earth, but then they you know reap the benefits and don't actually solve any of the problems that every company has offset, and then some companies try to help mitigate those and some don't, and Airbnb seems to be one that's at least trying to help mitigate that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you might be a homeowner here pretty soon. Sounds like. Do you think you'd be investing in Airbnb version of this? I mean, do you think you'd be using their services if you're like vacationing or out for a month at a time and want to rent out your home to some people?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think it would depend how long I'd be gone for.
Of
um
course. Yeah,
and
we can't legally do it right now renting, but
Yeah, yeah, but that'd be interesting. I don't know if I think if you would want to do it, and we've experienced this when we used Airbnb, specifically in London and Prague, is how you have some places that are meant for very, very short stays, up to one night, one night to a week, and then you have some that want you to stay for even longer than that because they don't want a constant flow of new people. You know, the more people you let in, the more potential for things to go wrong are. Uh, so I feel like it would depend on how long I was gone for, and then if you could actually rent it out for enough times to make it worth it, depending on that time. So who knows? We're talking about huge hypotheticals.
So you gotta get a place first.
Yeah. But yeah, it's but what do you think about like the redesign of the app and the website?
I thought it was a really, really smart move. I mean, they took advantage of, like I said, hotels being down, and committing to safety. Um, I, it sucks that they had to lay off, 25% of the employees, but I mean, it seemed to work for them. Their whole plan seemed to work, especially able to pull a $219 million profit. Like that's crazy, and especially during pandemic on a,
During
you know,
Rona times?
yeah, during Rona times. No, I think it's very impressive. That they seem to have a good feel for things, and I look forward to IPOing. Whether they do well or not, I have no idea.
Oh, I think
Um,
it's going to go through the roof.
really,
I think it's going to be a very, you either love it or hate it kind of deal. You know, it's like your Cowboys. Um, I think you're going to see people, uh, you're going to see people buy it up like there's no tomorrow, and you're going to see people try to short the hell out of it or think it's just not going to do well, but aren't confident enough to actually go and short it. I think it's a better long term play in terms of you know, especially if they can. We'll have to see on business travel. A lot of hotels are very reliant on business travel. Airbnb is not quite as much. I know they have that option available, but that has to be worked out with your employer. It's easier to convince my employer, for instance, I want to go stay in a Hilton than it is I want to go stay in this rando's apartment.
yeah,
Um, we're not even traveling anyway, though. So I'm talking about pastimes. But I think they've got a lot of runway to go, though, going into the future. You know, they can expand even more because, especially into a lot more niche areas, I feel like, especially when you're talking about, you're still going to be, even when we get the vaccines rolled out and everything, I think you'll see people go gangbusters, but I don't think it's going to be like flip the switch, we're back to normal and massive crowds. So you'll still see the summer of the national park continue for probably maybe another 2 summers, or doing things more outside naturey. But you know, how many people in, we'll use a Texas example, how many Airbnbs are there out in Marfa? You know, people try and people going around Big Ben. Um,
well, the outdoor scene might lend itself more, like a lot better to the Airbnb model, just because you have a more low key spot to hang out in that you don't have to you don't have to interact a lot of times with the host. They'll just leave the key or a code or something, and there's an agreement, and you don't have to be waiting in a lobby or something like that with hotels. So I think it might even lend itself better during the next couple of summers or however long the stigma kind of lasts. I know I'd be more willing to use Airbnb than a hotel in the near future, even when things open back up. So
yeah,
it's
you
probably
have
a good indicator.
yeah, you're less likely, the less people that have traveled through an area, you know, the more comfortable people seem to feel, and probably will feel going into the future. I also think if they do get such a successful IPO, they're going to have a large market cap and they can go on a buying spree and get whatever they want.
Sure.
So especially in the travel and leisure sector, which, while obviously it's going to rebound once in terms of stocks and market cap value, but once the vaccines are widespread and travel picks back up, but they may be able to go get somebody in the meantime, you know.
Yeah. It is also worth noting though that, like, can't go without saying that a lot of big companies like this, that when they first IPO, they do bleed a lot of funds. But I think, in my opinion, Airbnb is going to be just its own thing, where we really just don't know. It's kind of a, I wouldn't call it tech sector. I wouldn't call it really necessarily a, a leisure sector. I don't know
It's a
what
platform
you really
that's
classify it. Yeah, it's a platform. It's its own
yeah.
thing. So it might set a precedent for future IPOs.
Yeah, set a precedent. And it's also giving I think it's class H shares to hosts. And then once I want to say it's 100 billion market cap or something. There's a benchmark set to where once the market cap reaches that, hosts can start to sell their shares and cash in on the overall company success. So it gives them incentive to stay with the platform.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think it's in terms of is it going to flip or flop long term? I think this is going to be a flipper. I don't know the term. I'm not I'm not a house flipper. I don't think you're going to see a flop.
Long
And
term at least.
not long term. And I as long as they can stay out of trouble with local governments and state governments, I think they'll be fine in terms of taxes and potentially just fighting with hotel unions. So it's not an easy road ahead for them, but it is a long one that if they want to take advantage of it, they likely can.